Leadership in Challenging Times. Welcome to this short presentation on leadership. It's Monday 12th of April 2021. Restrictions are being lifted around the country. Pubs are open outdoors, hairdressers are open, non-essential retail's open. I think we'll all agree we have had a very challenging 12 months and there are still some challenges ahead. Who am I? My name is Tim Guest. This is me here. I used to be the MD of a company called Zodale based in Bedfordshire, B2B distribution company that I ran for 5 years as MD and then sold just before the pandemic started. I am a director and owner of Consulting 51 Limited, business management consultancy, leadership mentoring, non-exec director services. Some of the work I get involved in is change management for companies putting in new IT systems, mentoring leaders who are looking to grow their businesses. I'm also a chartered director from the Institute of Directors, and in my spare time I enjoy being a school student mentor. This has continued even throughout the pandemic, video mentoring and helping, mainly working with disadvantaged kids, mainly helping them with sort of interview skills, CV writing and all that sort of thing. So why am I giving this presentation? What qualifies me to talk to you about leadership? I have had hands-on experience of growing and then selling a business. I have learned from many mistakes. I've learned from experiences. I've learned from managing and leading different types of people. I have got qualifications from the Institute of Directors in Leadership. I've been trained in emotional intelligence and also NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I try to incorporate factors of these into my daily life when I'm working with my clients and when I'm working with with my student mentees as well. I've worked with many industry experts, so if you watched any of my other webinars, I've worked with psychotherapists, communication experts, team building experts, ex-special forces operatives, and everyone that I've worked with has been an expert in their field, and I have learned from every single one of those people I've worked with. I've got diverse experience in projects, so recently I've been working with some large multinational companies, working with their teams. Everyone who I work with I tend to pick up and learn interesting things from as well. What are we going to cover in this short session today? What is leadership? People often ask me, what's the difference between being a leader and a manager? Look after yourself first. We'll talk about self-care. Now, maybe 2 years ago we probably wouldn't have included this in a leadership presentation, but we certainly are now. We're going to look at different types of leadership, so what I call old school leadership versus new school leadership and what they look like. We're going to talk about the challenges of leading during and after a pandemic. Communication. How do we communicate with our employees, with our team, and how do we change the way we communicate? We'll then have a look at some tips for self-development as well. I'm a big advocate of self-development. I love learning. So this is a chap that I respect, Simon Sinek, or Simon Sinek, however you want to refer to him. He's done some fantastic TED Talks. Just Google him. You'll find him on YouTube. These are some of Simon Sinek's quotes around leadership. What is leadership? So leadership is about making others feel safe. I think now more than ever this is extremely important. Employees have been through a very rough time. Everyone's been through a rough time. People are naturally going to be anxious, maybe even feeling burnt out. It's about making people feel safe. A star wants to see themselves rise to the top. A leader wants to see those around them become stars. We'll talk about that more when we talk about the different types of leadership and empowering the teams that we work with. I love this one as well, and this is even more sort of pertinent now. Emails get reactions, phone calls start conversations. How often have you bought from a cold email? Not very often. When you receive an email from an employee or from a manager, how easy is it to misinterpret how that email has been written? You might be dealing with someone who is very short, that's their natural way, but you might read into that deeper. Great leaders inspire people to follow them. It's a classic quote, isn't it? If you want to lead people, you have to have followers. If people aren't going to follow you, you're just a manager. There's a difference between listening and waiting for your turn to speak. Now, people of all sorts of different walks of life, you'll notice this. Some people, literally, you can just see them. They're just waiting to speak, waiting to say their piece, and not really listening to what you're saying. To be a good leader, you've really got to listen. Listen to your employees, listen to your staff, listen to your customers. Be the leader you wish you had. Customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. The employees are the first line of the company. They're who the customer speaks to on the phone or emails. Get the employees to love the company. And if they don't respect you as a leader, they're not going to love the company that they work for. Now, when I do this presentation face-to-face, I ask for a bit of interaction here, but I normally like to ask why people think I've got a very old school airline safety card on the screen. I don't know why they all look such 70s style. Someone should redo them. Always place the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others. Now, we know that the reason we do this is that if the plane is running out of oxygen, if you're rushing around helping children and elderly people put their masks on but not putting your own mask on, you're probably not going to last very long. You'll be the one on the floor blocking the aisle who is running out of oxygen. So put your own mask on, make sure you're all right, make sure you're physically fit and then able to help as many other people as you can. This crosses over to business as well, particularly with the year that we've had. Many of us haven't been on lovely tropical relaxing holidays to go and unwind. We are physically and mentally broken, a lot of us. This next slide I'm going to talk about now a little bit on self-care. As I said before, 2 years ago, leadership, this probably wouldn't even come into a leadership presentation, but I think now with everything that we've all been through, it is more important than ever. And this is a quote that I found on the internet. It was an unknown quote. Self-care is giving the world the best of you, not what's left of you. These are my tips for basically looking after yourself, looking after your own sanity, pretty much. Plan your day. Plan your day the night before. It helps to either get a book, use something like Microsoft To Do, sit down and get all those points off your mind, what you need to do tomorrow, and write it down, stick it in the to-do list. It'll help you when you go into bed as well, because it won't be on your mind. You've got 1,001 things to do the next day. It's also very satisfying to tick things off a list when you've done them. Practice daily gratitude. I do this with my daughter, particularly when we were struggling with the homeschooling and the misery of online lessons and everything else. I'm sure parents can relate to. Try and find at least one thing, if not three things, at the end of the day that you are grateful for. Are you grateful for having a lovely family? Are you grateful for the fact that the sun came out for the first time in months and you're able to sit outside with a beer? And just write a list, because that will put your brain in a positive space. Schedule in some exercise. Even easier now the gyms are open, thank goodness. I like to exercise, I like to run, I like to go to the gym, but I find that if I don't put it in my diary, you can easily get booked up back to back with client calls, with various other things, and then you then don't do your exercise. If you want to do a run every morning at 7 o'clock, put it in your Outlook or iCalendar, so you're doing a run every morning at 7. If you want to go to the gym every day at 12:30, put it in your calendar and do not book anything over that slot unless it's an emergency. Use a notebook and pen. This is very old school. I walk around with a tiny little notepad and a pen, and what I use this for is to write down stuff that comes into my head, ideas. It could simply be things like, okay, I've had a really good idea for my client John, and you write it down in the book. It could be an idea for a new webinar you want to do. It could be an idea for something that you want to bring to the attention of the board in the next board meeting. Stick it in the book, then it's out of your brain. The human brain can only hold a certain amount of things in itself at any time for processing, and your brain will become tired and run down if you're trying to keep 10 different ideas in your head. And these brilliant ideas you have at midnight or 5 in the morning, whatever else, they'll disappear by the day. So write them down. Don't start the day with caffeine. It's very easy to do. I know a lot of people who do it. I learnt this from Mr. Ollie Ollerton, who is an ex-Special Forces operator and entrepreneur who I do some work with. Start the day with a healthy drink. Your body's been fasting for 9, 10, 11 hours. Apple cider vinegar, turmeric, cayenne pepper, ginger, something nice and cleansing. If you put poison in your body, and caffeine is poison, that's why it wakes you up. If you put poison in your body, the minute you wake up, that is not a good way to continue the day. Plan some thinking time. Now again, a lot of us will be busy, we'll drop the children to school, we'll rush to the office, we'll get in the office, we'll open our emails, we'll get on with the day. You haven't got any time or any space in your brain to think about those brilliant ideas you've written down. So schedule some time in your calendar to get your ideas book out and work through some. You might decide some are useless and you cross them off, you move on. You might decide some are worth pursuing. So think about them and start planning whether you're going to implement them or not. Prioritize and delegate. Now this is very important. There's only a certain amount of hours in the day. People think that time management is an art. Well, time management isn't an art because there's no such thing as time management, in my opinion. You can't manage time. Time will move on for eternity. What you can do is you can manage yourself and how you use that time. So prioritize the time. Do the things that are going to earn you money first. Delegate things that you don't need to do yourself. So those small repetitive tasks, see if you can automate them, or at least delegate them to someone else to do. Keep a positive mindset. Now this is much easier said than done, particularly off the back of a multi-month lockdown and pandemic and everything's closed. We won't go in there now, but positivity is very important, and again it's something that I try and practice every day. Not sitting there with these negative thoughts around your head about that client who hasn't paid their bill, who you want to send the boys around, all that sort of thing. There's so many books on positive thinking out there. It really does have an impact on the way you live your life. Avoid the mainstream media. I haven't watched the news or read the news in months. The daily coronavirus briefing, who cares? I'm not interested in that. BBC News, all it is talking about is depression, people who are dead, people who've killed other people, how many people have died of coronavirus. Is this relevant to the way you live your life? No. So turn it off. Don't watch it. It's extremely negative. I tailor my Google newsfeed to show me news that's relevant to me, relevant to my industry, relevant to the financial markets, relevant to areas that I work in. So of course I'm keeping up to date with the news, but I'm not mindlessly sucking in by osmosis this negativity that is funneled into us by the media. And again, I learned this from Mr. Ollie Ollerton. It's a morning routine. Set yourself a routine that you stick to every morning. Now, if you have variables in your life like children or animals, it can be quite tricky to have a morning routine that is set to a particular time. So have the time flexible, but it can be a simple routine. So, getting up in the morning, doing some meditation, doing some exercise, having your healthy drink, not checking your emails, not looking at the news, allowing yourself time for thinking. And all these positive things are going to help you go and attack the day so that you are successful. Now on to leadership then, and the types of leadership. We said we're going to talk about old school leadership versus new school leadership and servant leadership. And again, anyone who's worked in project management, particularly agile project management, Scrum, will know about the servant leader. The servant leader, to use a definition here, seeks to ensure enterprise success by maximising the capability of those who operate the value stream, empowering and holding them accountable to make the work decisions in the moments that matter the most. So what this means is empowering the people you work with to actually do their job. This is the classic old school hierarchical leadership model. So you've got the plant manager, the boss, sitting in his office, probably with his feet on the desk, scanning the internet, whatever else he's doing. He's got his supervisors and departmental managers who are whipping the associates and the technicians and the general workers to deliver the value stream, to do what generates the company money. If the people at the bottom make a mistake, the people up their own will probably bollock them or deduct money from their salary. If they do well, they might get a small bonus. You don't know. The person at the top rules with an iron fist. It's her or his way or the highway. You probably worked in places like this at some point. I know I have. Turn that on its head and you have servant leadership. So you're prioritising and putting at the top the associates, the technicians, the worker, and the plant manager or the boss or the leader is really at the bottom getting involved. So this is command and control. Literally, this is how we do things, and if you get things wrong, you will be in trouble. And this is supporting and developing. A classic phrase that I heard when I was on one of the courses is the finance director says to the managing director, yeah, what if we spend all this money on training and develop our staff, and then they go and leave and work for someone else? The MD then says, what if we don't train them and they stay? So moving on from that is transactional versus transformational leadership. And again, this fits in very nicely because we're looking at empowering of employees. So transactional leaders, which is very much the hierarchical leadership, focus on goals. So people will be set KPIs, goals, they'll be reviewed at the end of every month, every quarter, every year. They'll be rewarded if they've hit their target, possibly by getting commission or some other bonus. If they don't, they'll be punished. If they make a mistake, they might be publicly humiliated. They might lose money from their pay. I worked in a warehouse many years ago, and for every mistake you made, you lost £5 from your pay packet, which was not very motivating, really. Transactional leaders are very reactive in nature, so they don't appear to be planning and at all proactive. Transformational leaders, on the other hand, they're focused on the vision and the values of the organisation. This is something I've included just after the pandemic. They want to make people feel safe and feel valued. This is something I worked on with a psychologist recently. Employees need to feel safe at the moment. They need to feel that their job is safe. They need to feel the environment that they work in is safe. They need to feel listened to. Transformational leaders will use their charisma and their enthusiasm to motivate. You know, think of those bosses or those leaders that you've seen who are inspirational. They make you want to follow them. You know, Steve Jobs is probably a brilliant example. People want to follow Steve into battle, for want of a better phrase, or wanted to when he was alive. And again, post-pandemic, we're looking at bringing in some empathy, some emotion, asking the employees, how are you feeling? You know, how is everything going? And really understanding with people's difficult situations that they're going through, rather than simply giving them a reward and punishment situation. Transformational leaders are a lot more proactive in their nature as well. So which leader do you admire and why? Have a think. And you know, if you admire a particular leader, do some research on them. Have they done some TED Talks? What are the qualities of that particular leader? One of the leaders that I really like is Tony Hsieh, CEO and founder of Zappos, that was sold to Amazon for several billion. Very, very sad news. Unfortunately, Tony died, I think, October last year. But he wrote a fantastic book called Delivering Happiness. I recommend anyone reads it. So what are the challenges of leading during and after this pandemic? Well, I think many of us are aware of the challenges that we're facing. But let's just go through a few now and how we can counteract them. So communication has always been difficult. You know, we might be used to having a team all in one office. You know, even 100 people in a call centre, you can communicate with them very easily. reasonably easily. Scheduled and passive communication has also become a lot more difficult. Working from home, we went from having nearly everyone in the office all over the country to pretty much everyone working from home overnight. We're still going to see people working from home going forward. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where 100% of workers are in the office 5 days a week. So we need to make sure that we are catering for people being able to work from home, including these people in the conversations that we're having in the office, making sure that people aren't feeling left out just because they're working remotely. Now, mental health is a big one. You go onto LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever else, people are now taking note of employees' mental health. I think employers were doing this before, but I think now it's been brought such to the forefront of people's minds. This is one good thing to come out of this pandemic, is that employee mental health, staff mental health is being taken a lot more seriously. As leaders, we need to look at our own sanity as well. Again, one of the psychotherapists I've worked with, Charlotte Braithwaite, talks about wounded leaders. So we are, if you are a leader, you're going to be feeling it as well. You're probably burnt out almost. So how do we deal with that as leaders going forward? Who do we talk to about it? Making sure we recognise the fact that we might be, struggling. How do we maintain the values and culture of an organisation? If a company's culture is built on teamwork and fun and going out once a week, we haven't been able to do that. So we need to make sure we are focusing on ensuring that the company's values and culture are carried on even when we've got half the team working from home, even through this pandemic, even when we're going to be dealing with half remote workers. We also have to look at, when we're bringing people back into the office, are there going to be factions between the people who were in the office because they had to be and the people at home who had it worse? You didn't have your commute every day, but you were using your own gas and electric bills and buying food, and someone was working from home with 4 kids running around versus the person who's working from home on their own, lonely. Really need to bring all these things into consideration. How do we develop future talent? This is a big one. Particularly if you're bringing on graduates or junior people, they learn by osmosis. They learn by listening to the best people in the office. They learn by talking to senior consultants at the coffee machine, doing a day a week in a different department. So we need to think of ways we can continue to develop our younger employees and our employees who are stars of the future. Another challenge, innovation and a lack of a desire to change. In change management, one of the key points is instilling a desire to want to change, to participate and engage in the change amongst the employees. Because if they're not interested in this new IT system you're putting in, or this new voice over IP phone system, or this new customer ordering system, it's not going to work. And let's face it, these people, whatever industry you work in, have had it tough. There's going to be a certain amount of apathy. People are not coming back into the office refreshed. People probably haven't had much time off, and if they've had time off, they've been at home painting the house or tidying the loft. People are really going to struggle to want to take on more changes. So again, this is where the whole making people feel safe, feel valued, feel listened to comes into it. So we talked about communication. I want to spend a bit more time on this slide here. So how do we communicate well in challenging times? Now, my opinion is that we need to communicate more frequently and in a less structured manner with our teams, with our peers. So instead of a weekly team Zoom meeting where everybody logs in, perhaps doesn't have their camera on, listens to some of the presentation or maybe doesn't, have less structured, more frequent meetings. In project management, we often have something called a daily stand-up meeting where it's literally 10-15 minutes and everyone talks about what they've done, what they're going to do, what's blocking them from doing their role. This is a very, very good process to bring in even to business as usual type environments. One-to-one check-in calls. Just ring your team. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Anything you're struggling with? And just start talking. Don't relate it to work. How are you doing with this client? How are you doing with your sales target? How are you doing with your these customers who are late paying? Make it more personal, more human. Again, this is something that I've seen throughout the pandemic that clients of mine have done really well. A bit like the daily stand-up really, but they're doing it on a weekly basis. So every morning, just having a coffee chat with all employees. It's not compulsory to join, but it's an open call. The MD will be on there, senior people, and people just go around the room. How was your weekend? What are your objectives for this week? What are you going to be working on? And then if there's anything that needs to be taken offline with those employees, you can follow that up. Even better, every Friday afternoon. Again, I've got clients who send beers around to their employees, and then people log on 3:30, Zoom call. When you've got people coming back into the office, socially distanced beers. The people who aren't in the office, get them on the Zoom in the boardroom, just so that people can have a chat with each other, not following a work agenda. This is something that should always be done, but I feel in challenging times should be done even more. Involve staff in the planning. Are you bringing your staff back into work? Yes, you are. What date are you bringing them back in? 21st of June, whenever it is. How are you going to bring them back in? Where are people going to sit? What processes are you putting in place to make them feel safe? Get the staff involved. What do they want? What's going to make them feel safe? Communicate the plan. This goes with anything. You might be moving premises because you need to downsize. Get the staff involved. What risks do you see in us moving to this new premises? Ask all the workers and get people to it will make them feel valued, and you'll also start to find out things you may not have thought of as a leader. Online customer events. We are just about getting to the point where we can go and see customers again. I'm doing some face-to-face customer events later on this month, which is going to be great. I think we are still a way away from multi-person general events, so running online customer events. There's loads of platforms that you can use to get your customers involved in what you're doing. I've even seen people doing short sessions where they're actually including beer tasting with their clients as well. So we've spoken about beer a lot in this, haven't we? Food tasting then, whatever else. You can send a hamper to your customers, and people can log into a Zoom or Teams. We follow a process, and it can almost be the same as having people in your boardroom, just obviously from the comfort of their own office or their own home. So they're my tips basically for leadership in challenging times. I just want to spend a bit of time on a last slide really. There's a phrase that I like to use, which is stop scrolling and start learning. Particularly this last year, I found myself with a bit more free time on my hands, particularly in the evenings. I was doing less travel, less overnight trips, taking less flights, certainly having less lads' weekends away and less nights out. So I have been learning. I've done project management courses, change management courses, financial technology course, accountancy course with the ACCA. You can go onto the Institute of Directors website. This site here called Udemy, ACCA, Coursera is fantastic, and the Saïd Business School, part of the University of Oxford. Coursera is brilliant. You can find courses on pretty much anything you want, ranging from a 2-hour course to an MBA. So stop scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and start learning a new skill. That brings us to the end of the short presentation. I was going to keep it to 30 minutes, and I'm pleased to see we are just on 29 minutes. I like to be nice and accurate. These are my contact details here. I'll stick them in the comments as well if anybody is interested in getting in contact with me. If anybody wants any help with any leadership mentoring, any change management, or just wants to chat about some of the things I've spoken about in this presentation, please feel free. Thank you.